which is the SMC, or the typical break of structure in quotation marks entry. Now, when we're talking about this entry, it's important to note that the only reason we identify structure is so that we can identify inducements. However, as we just went ahead and went over, how do you know if it's a break of structure or, an inducement? Well, all structure is inducement. However, if you get a reaction from the correct area that will give either be the right area that's going to make all lower lows, like if it's this low is going to make lower lows, great, then we're going to utilize a BOS. If this is a true order block that's going to have a meaningful reaction, then we're going to look for BOS. At the same time, if this is a valid order block and it will at least give a good reaction to, after taking out buys liquidity, then taking out sell liquidity, you can still look for this type of entry, but you just have to know that it's going to be short term, as the main move is going to be buys. With that being said, let's go ahead and look at the BOS entry. Now, we all know, when it comes to SMC, all SMC traders utilize BOS for their confirmation. Now, we don't utilize break of structure for the confirmation for entries. We rather utilize inducement, meaning we look to sell above a high into an order block to go lower. We look to buy below a low into an order block, then to go higher. So inducement is telling us that there's some form of liquidity lying before the order block where several traders are having their stop losses or looking to enter trades in the opposite direction, and that's ensuring that our positions are getting liquidated into the order block. With that being said, though, let's say that we're looking at this order block right here for a sell example. Well, what you can notice to the left is that we have some form of order flow. Now, you aren't able to see all these visible order blocks in this time frame, but what we do know is with the whole wall that we talk about, right? Efficient price action, inefficient. Price is magnetized to not only liquidity, but imbalances, because imbalances are unequal, unfair distribution of only one type of trader in the marketplace, or at least, several types of positions just in one direction. With that being said, there's no imbalance. The imbalance was filled, no imbalance over here. So the only imbalance that's left is on this 5 minute. With that being said, this makes a lot of sense for us to be looking for sells at this order block. Now, if it's going to hold, well, that's part of the analysis. We are actually looking for buys, but this is still a good position to take. So what we can see is that we rated some form of liquidity to the sell side, and now that we've went ahead and done the same thing to the buy side, as we have just gone over in terms of the cycle of the algorithm from a range standpoint, this is the engineered liquidity point that just randomly picks up, doesn't mitigate anything, and then a lot of imbalance afterwards. So this is going to be the liquidity that's taken out to the buy side before this order block. Now, where are we going to be looking to target? Well, our targets are always going to be inducements and engineered liquidity. So yes, you could say this could be a target, but because we are structurally bullish, or liquidity-wise bullish from this low, this won't get taken. So where's the next area of engineered liquidity? Well, it's right here, because we have an order block below. Price just doesn't mitigate anything here, randomly picks up. So this will become the target that we're going to utilize. At the same time, yes, we do have some form of order block here on a lower time frame, or even if you want to look at this 5 minute right here, this is an order block, but why won't it go higher? Well, as we talk about SMC traps as well, SMC traps are order blocks that lie at inducements or just before engineered liquidity. So if this is all engineered liquidity here, I believe that we'll just go higher from here, probably go into the order block, have a little bit of a reaction, and then keep going to our target. So when we have this perspective in mind, let's figure out now how we can go ahead and enter. So we have this lower time frame, type 2 inducement for the order block. So now we're going to want to see is price to rapidly go into the order block, Now let's figure out how we can go ahead and secure entry. So we're going to go down to the 1 minute. So we're not utilizing anything yet. So if we had to think about structure, structurally, we are seeing some form of higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. Now there's two reasons or two ways that we can enter based off of BOS. One of which is, yes, we want to wait for this break of structure to occur. This would be the last higher low that made the higher high into the order block. And we would ideally now wait for price to break this low. However, price can also make equal lows here, and then it could also be taken out. So this is, I wouldn't obviously consider this a break of structure, but this is very close. If you know that there's liquidity here, I would go ahead and for sure utilize that as a confirmation for a BOS entry. Now, what do we see price do? Price just runs away now. So now here's our pending break of structure point, but how do we enter? Well, again, like we said, we could have some form of order block right here that price is mitigating. And now if we're going to choose that entry, what would we look at? Well, where's the order block that swept liquidity, that has some form of liquidity or inducement before it, and is going, and it has relevance from the overall liquidity perspective? Well, what we can see from the buy side is that this order block at this high took out liquidity to the buy side, and then it rated, and now we have imbalance. Where's the liquidity lying before it? Well, at this moment in time, we don't really have an inducement, but what we do have is some form of engineered liquidity right here. That's acting as liquidity that's going to require to get liquidated into the order block, then to sell all the way lower. So if that's going to be the engineered liquidity point, then we know that this is going to be our entry, right? So why am I not choosing this? Well, because there's no inducement, there's no liquidity before it, right? So we're gonna have to come all the way back up here, and that's the only valid order block. So this would be an extreme order block right here, and we're looking for price to come back to mitigate it to the T. We have a very small stop loss, and our take profit is going to be at this engineered liquidity here for a quick 1 to 10. And let's see what price does. Again, there's no inducement for here, so you're not taking this. But price is rating now that engineered liquidity. We're looking for those sells. Price then taps right into the order block, and oops, very close to the stop loss, but what ends up happening? Price will then just continue all the way lower and smash our take profit. Of course, it's going to stall, build more liquidity, and then it absolutely smashes. So that's a quick 1 to 10. Of course, with our further refinements that you'll be learning today, that becomes a quick 1 to take just on an intra-session play. Now let's take a quick look at the buys. Now looking at this buy example, we are going to identify exactly what we did with the sells. So now let's see what price is doing. Well, we see it's establishing some form of order flow sweep. We then have a new order block, an inducement before it, comes to mitigate, goes higher. Engineered liquidity in the future, comes to mitigate the order block, goes higher. Type 2 inducement before the order block, comes to make equal highs. Now we have a higher low inducement coming into a 1 hour order block. So now we know that we're looking for buys. We know that we're looking for some form of, bullish order flow is definitely intact. So now with that being said, we have our 3 targets, our engineered liquidity target, or this is our inducement. We then have our equal highs target, and then we have our swing target as for new structural higher highs. Now, when we have this 1 hour order block, let's go ahead and dive in on the lower time frames and figure out how we can enter. So we're going to identify now that lower time frame structure coming into the order block. Now, there's no clear structure on the 2 minutes, so let's go to the 1 minute. Looking at this 1 minute perspective, we see that starting from the high to the low, we have some form of high, higher low, higher high. So now I'm identifying this as some form of bearish structure. So this is where structure first turned over. This was a high, and then this is where it turned to bear. So we have a high, a new low, because this low was broken. This would be our bearish internal break of structure, telling us we're having a retracement on that 1 hour bullish time frame. So now we have our bearish break of structure. We're now going to look at this lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. So now what we're going to do is we just need to wait for that break of structure for then us to identify the order block to get in. So we're just going to patiently wait on our hands. We do have now a high, higher low, or a high, lower low, lower high. So you can consider this if that fits your perspective of structure. Now we only have a couple candles, but it still is some form of small pullback. So I'm going to identify it. All right. Let's see what price is doing. Again, still. See, even this isn't a pullback. This is just one candle, and this for me is like an inducement within the range. So let's just go ahead and press play and see where price first breaks that structure. All right. So now that we have this break of structure right here, we now want to identify where the order block is. So in my mind right now, you're always going to have 2 types of order blocks. You're going to have now a decisional, and you're going to have an extreme. Based off this 1 minute perspective, if we had to choose an extreme, our extreme order block would be right down here. And this is where we would look for buys. At the same time though, where would our decisional be? Our decisional order block, I'm just going to fix this real quick. That decisional order block is going to kind of be that last area where price had some form of resistance coming into this. Again, this would be an SMC trap because it's a false order block. It has some form of rejection prior to going higher. So we're looking at this as our first area of entry, but again, we also have that decisional. So where's the decisional? Well, where is the imbalance? This is the imbalance right here. The only imbalance that's present, not here, not here, it's actually just going to be this candle right here. However, you don't just want to stay on one time frame. You want to go and utilize a different time frame to see if there's any lower imbalance. So if we go to the 2 minute, do we see how this imbalance now has changed? So rather than just refining this, I would always go to the absolute lowest imbalance prior to breaking structure. So I'd actually be looking at this for the decisional order block. Now we have a decisional here. You then have your extreme here as well. So if you want, you can actually go ahead and choose this as your extreme here as decisional, because this has engineered liquidity beforehand, and we should see some form of inducement prior to price coming to this decisional. Now what we can do is we have our first position set here. We actually have our second position set right here as well. So we can go ahead and either set a limit, or we can wait for price to give us some form of inducement, and then we can manually enter our position. So even this would be a quick 1 to 10. Let's see what price ends up doing if we go back to that 1 minute time frame. All right, it comes right into it, just mitigates it immediately. This is a fractal inducement on the seconds time frame, so let's see what price is going to do. All right. Now, what's the management, or what's the protocol to break even? Well, we have a high. Now we have a higher low to higher high, because now this is breaking structure. Lower high, lower low. We've now shifted bullish. After this lower low, we now have a new high, a new higher low, and a new higher high. So now this would be our break even point. And then after we go ahead and break even, where is our entry? Again, based off that order block on the 2 minute, we're going to be targeting up here. So now we can just hold with confidence. If we get broken even, guess what? We already know now price will come to the extreme. So let's go ahead and play the position. As you see, price is just going to continue going higher and higher and higher. And as soon as it smacks our take profit, we know and have the confidence that we have made the right decision.